Hurricane watch has just been issued for parts of Louisiana as a tropical storm system gains strength in the Gulf of Mexico. Our meteorologist Tom Sater has a new forecast just out from the National Hurricane Center. Tom, the system is already flooding parts of New Orleans and states of emergency are in effect.
Yeah, Wolf, hurricane season started June 1st. It's been relatively quiet, but we may be looking at our first landfall, not just of a tropical storm, but maybe a Category 1 hurricane in south central Louisiana. Today, a precursor with the heavy rain that moved through. An odd event. Here in yellow right now, we've got a tropical storm watch from the Pearl River to the mouth of the Mississippi. Does not include New Orleans right now. In pink, from the mouth of the Mississippi to Cameron, Louisiana, it is a hurricane watch. Most likely will change to a warning, but we've got a couple of days. This hasn't even been named a depression yet. If it's named a tropical storm in the next 24 hours, its name will be Barry. The thunderstorms that move through, tornado warnings. We had submerged cars, businesses, the French Quarter, 250 calls for emergency help and assistance. The last thing they need is to pick up over 9 inches of rainfall when we're looking at maybe 10, 15, or even 20 in the days ahead. The reason this is so important to watch, the Mississippi River is at 16 foot at a levee in New Orleans. When Katrina hit, it was only 3. It's expected to go to 20, the highest level in 90 years. A real test for this levee system come this weekend. We'll have much more in the days.
Today, Secretary Acosta went before the public. He repeatedly said that taking Epstein to trial would have been, quote, rolling the dice, end quote, even though Justice Department figures show that U.S. attorneys brought more than 3,600 similar cases between the years 2004 and 2013. Acosta repeatedly shifted responsibility for the decision onto career prosecutors. He repeatedly lamented that times were different back then, as if back then were 50 years ago instead of 2008 when all of this occurred. The one thing Acosta did not do, not once, was apologize to the alleged victims or even say he'd do anything differently.
Secretary, a lot of people are watching this news conference, including several young women who say they were teenagers when Jeffrey Epstein sexually assaulted them. They say they went to you looking for help, and they didn't hear back from you until it was too late. Do you owe them an apology?
So, you're raising the issue of victim notification. And in the documents that I've circulated, I've addressed the issue of victim notification as well.
Okay, so that's not even answering the question that was asked, let alone offering any kind of an apology. And no regrets here either. Listen.
So standing here today, are you basically saying that you feel that you did everything you could, you got the best deal you could get, and you have no regrets?
We believe that we proceeded appropriately.
A federal judge says otherwise. The new indictment, in fact, suggests otherwise as well. The fact that dozens of accusers had no say in the deal, well, that certainly says something, just not to the labor secretary.
Do you really have nothing else to say to these victims beyond you should come forward? That places a lot of burden on children. What else do you have to say? You've avoided addressing these people directly. Why is that?
So to be clear, that is not all I said. You know, I think, if I recall, and I obviously don't have a transcript here, but you know, what I've said previously is, look, I have seen these interviews, and I generally can't begin to fathom what these victims have been through. I don't think that anyone that has not been in this situation can begin to fathom. The closest I can come is to think, what would I feel like if one of my girls was going through this?
Well, keeping them honest, no one doubts what a father would do to protect a child. The question tonight is, what did a public servant, that public servant, who's now serving the cabinet of the Trump administration, do or not do to protect everyone's children?
For 3 months, little Marvin has spent most of his days in Juarez, Mexico, in this makeshift classroom. Volunteers created this school to give migrant children a sense of normalcy. But today is Marvin's last day.
Today they're leaving to Guatemala.
Lucero de Alba is a children's book author and has spent most of the last year volunteering to help thousands of migrants who've shown up in this border town. She says Marvin's family has been waiting for 3 months to request asylum in the United States, but his mother is giving up and returning to Guatemala. And that's because the wait is very long. It takes a long time.
Well, she's almost there, but she doesn't want to risk it.
In January, the Trump administration rolled out the Migrant Protection Protocols, often called the Remain in Mexico policy. It forces migrants to wait in Mexican border towns until their number is called to cross the border and request asylum. Juarez government officials say right now more than 5,500 people in the border city are on the wait list to simply request asylum. The wait time is about 4 months. They have to wait even longer to get a court date in the U.S. As they wait, De Alva says thousands of people are crammed into the 14 migrant shelters that have opened along the U.S.-Mexico border since February, and they're feeling the stress. Like 20-year-old Abert Ramirez, who came from Honduras and has been waiting 4 months to request asylum. He says he rarely leaves the walls of the shelter because he fears the city around him.
He says right now he's getting his strength from his family that send him messages to keep waiting, but he's not sure how much longer that will last and how much more patience he will have.
Have you heard of people saying, I don't want to wait in line anymore? I'm going to sneak in illegally and try to avoid being caught?
A lot of them.
A lot of them?
Yes, they just get desperate.
Many migrants facing months and months of waiting here in Juarez say they're taking matters into their own hands. They're too desperate, so they'll come to this part of the border, they'll jump over and dart across to the U.S. side, turning themselves in to immigration officials. Because of that, the Mexican government has deployed army soldiers along this stretch of the border and in other places to deter those migrants from doing just that. U.S. immigration officials say the Trump administration's strategy is slowing the flow of migrants. Border Patrol says apprehensions dropped 28% from May to June.
Our strategy is working. The president's engagement with Mexico, the deal to enforce immigration security on their southern border, to partner with us on tackling transnational criminal organizations, that's clearly having an impact on the flow.
But critics say forcing migrants to wait in dangerous Mexican border towns is inhumane.
We're seeing upticks in the cases of kidnapping, of assaults. These are people that are easily targeted, especially, Central American migrants. It's very difficult, and we're putting them at risk knowingly.